Gen 4 introducing the physical special split is a major reason why that generation and everything after is so strong. It's not just about the big blowout power of huge base power moves like Close Combat and Draco Meteor, or even like the addition of items rather like Life Orb and Choice Specs. Now, it's not just about those things which are flashy and just rip apart everything in sight instantly, but it's more about how everything is stronger now, because everything has decent options to attack on both sides of the spectrum, regardless of typing. Whereas in the first three generations, you hope that your attacking stat matched up with the typing you were given in terms of stab, and if not, well, you're out of luck. So the best example of this is by far Gyarados, because in Gen 4 it gets its physical water stab, which had been eluding it for the first three generations. And its powerful waterfall is one of the most dangerous attacks in the tier. There are tons more examples like this. So when we explore the question, what if the physical special split never happened, and it continued in the vein of the first three generations, then the immediate takeaway is going to be, yeah, it would not be as brutally power crept. Not to say that there wouldn't be, immense levels of power, because that's just what Pokemon does, and, the addition of moves like Draco Meteor and Close Combat, and the addition of, strong boosting items, and, strong new Pokemon, obviously, those are going to be there no matter what. But there are going to be several examples of Pokemon that would not be nearly as overbearing or not necessarily even overbearing in the sense of being broken, but just, they can be really good without being broken, but they wouldn't be anywhere near as good as they are without that typing shift. And we're assuming that everything else stayed the same. You could say, well, what if these Pokemon, these new ones, were designed with the physical special split in mind? And to that I would say, well, Gyarados definitely wasn't. Yeah, so Gyarados is far from the only example, but it's the best one. So we'll just assume everything else was the same and examine how a couple metagames would have shaken out differently. So the Gen 4 in particular, Gyarados is one of the biggest threats, and you take that away entirely. A Stealth Rock weak physical attacker with no stab, because it's still going to be using HP flying for stab, and I don't think that's going to cut it in the much stronger Generation 4. So I would not be surprised if Gyarados felt a UU or something, which is hilarious to think about, in Gen 4 anyway. But yeah, there's also the fact that DD Outrage, Dragon Dance Outrage, is not a thing. Because yes, we'll assume that Outrage still got buffed to 120 base power, but it's still going to be a special attack. For those unfamiliar, then the way the first three generations split up the physical special divide is the evolution types, including the Sinnoh ones, which weren't out at the time. And for the Fairy gens, then Fairy, we'll just assume by that same logic. The evolution types plus Dragon are all special. Everything else is physical. So Flareon, Vaporeon, Jolteon, Espeon, Umbreon, Glaceon, Leafeon, and, by that logic, we would say Sylveon as well. So Fairy would be a special type, which makes sense, too. Just based off of moves like Moonblast. So I guess it would mean that Play Rough is a special attack, but hey, so is Fire Punch in the first, in Gens 2 and 3, because it didn't exist in Gen 1. So, yeah, you would have... look, a lot of things would stay the same. Things like a lot of Swords Dancers, like Scizor and Lucario, they're still going to be using the same kinds of attacks. But it's more that the Dragon Dance Outrage phenomenon of Salamence and starting in Platinum when it got Outrage, and then Dragonite replacing it once it got banned. That's gone. Even Mixments. Mixments was a terror with Draco, Fire Blast, Earthquake, and Outrage. That was new Mixments. Old Mixments was Draco, Fire Blast, Brick Break, Roost. But that it could still use as much as it liked. But the substantial difference is that you no longer... Draco, you're at -2. Oh, you still have powerful physical Dragon stat. And you're able to melt walls on both sides of the walling spectrum with one type of stab, which is unresisted, save for, steals. So That was a huge part of what made men such an enormous threat. So I wonder if it would be broken because like its DD set really warped the tier because it was too fast for how strong it was as a DDer. Because Dragonite is similarly strong, but it's not nearly as fast. And that makes dealing with it, both before and after it gets a DD so much easier. And with Mence, then it's like even if it does get that DD without the physical special split, then it's still not nearly as threatening because again, its physical stab is now HP flying, so it's just going to be run. I mean, look, Mix Mence was a terror in Advance, and giving it Draco Meteor is going to make it even scarier, especially if it's running like Life Orb and Roost and everything. But it's not going to, and it might just be too good just based off of that. Because Mixed Mence, the problem with Mence was that if you guess wrong, you lose the entire game. If you guess right, you just lose a Pokemon. That was considered, the good outcome. And that still might be not exactly the healthiest, most desirable element to have in a metagame. But you also don't have that factor where it can just DD and take over the entire game because DD HP flying is just, again, not going to be nearly as threatening in this much more fast-paced metagame where it's got a Stealth Rock weakness to contend with. You want more immediate damage, so you want the Draco, so you're not going to be outraging all over the place. So, I mean, then there's other things, like Gengar is not the Gengar we know from Gen 4 and beyond because it's still not using Special Shadow Ball. And Focus Blast, forget it. I mean, with T-Tar getting a special defense boost, like in Gen 3 you can get away with Gengar like HP Grassing or Giga Draining a weakened T-Tar, but here, no, absolutely not. So it would be, I mean, the Ghosts are, dealing with T-Tar becomes so much worse. Well, on the other hand, T-Tar still only has Special Pursuit and Crunch because it doesn't, so its Choice Band set is not nearly as threatening, but and its Scarf set would be very different as well, because the reason its Scarf Pursuits are dangerous is because it goes off such a huge attack stat. Physical Pursuit was one of the biggest changes in Gen 4, but it's still going to be T-Tar buffed by Special Defense. Yeah, I mean, Heatran, that's another one. If it wants to run a ground move, it's going to have to run Earthquake off its much worse attack stat rather than the far preferable Earth Power. So it affects pretty much every... Pokemon like Jirachi aren't really going to change substantially. Yes, there's going to be some changes. But, yeah, that's... I have one more Gen 4 game here. Yeah, then there's going to be things like, Gliscor and Hippowdon and Swampert, which are not really going to change. But, oh, that's what I was forgetting. Yeah, Breloom. Breloom never getting Grass Stab, or, Physical Grass Stab. It'd still be a fine Pokemon with Poison Heal and, its wonderful move pool. There are plenty of great Breloom sets that don't run Seed Bomb. But, not being able to run Seed Bomb, that's something else. Or, not being able to run it physically, you know what I mean. So that would be a very, very different... OU is not the only tier that would be affected, obviously. Because, the sight of Venusaur reminds me that in Gen 4 it gains Special Sludge Bomb, which is, obviously much more threatening coming off its far better special attack stat. As opposed to... look, Venusaur gets by fine in Gen 3 with Physical Sludge Bomb. It's not a bad move by any means, but it just prefers to have it physical. Or special, sorry. So a Power Whip, and my mind went to the physical side. Yeah, Jirachi, one interesting thing about Jirachi is that it can't run Iron Head and Fire Punch on fully physical sets anymore. So that actually makes dealing with it slightly more palatable, because if it wants to go for those risky Fire Punch burns, or not even risky, just those annoying Fire Punch burns, risky to deal with rather, those Fire Punch burns, or the coverage, then it's going to have to make some sort of concession. Either they're going to be weak because you're running a minus special attack nature, or you're splitting EVs, or you're going minus defense, or something. Yeah. So, that was an unfortunate miss. I covered this game and the previous game on my channel years and years back if you want to go digging. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's... things like other additions like U-Turn and the aforementioned CC and Close Combat, they're more or less the same. But, you know, the Pokemon like Starmie don't really change in general. But, yeah. Oh, yes, that was a bold Starmie. Yeah, I think I just don't want to skip through the end of this game before we move on to Gen 5. Oh, it froze. Oh, there we go. Yeah, I'm sure I'm definitely, like, forgetting things, obviously. Oh, that's a good one. Speaking of DD Tar, like, it can't run things like Ice Punch and Aqua Tail for coverage on DD, so that makes it a lot easier to deal with. Or even, like, Fire Punch, which all of which are standards on Gen 4 DD Tar. Yeah, you can't pack coverage. Like, the concession in Gen 3, if you want to run Ice Beam DD Tar for Flygon, then you gotta, you know, make that same concession as like a Fire Punch Jirachi. You know, same. I mean, DD Fire Blast T-Tar is pretty much non-existent, but you could theoretically. But it's the same idea. And in Gen 4, then it's you just, you know, use it off that superior attack stat. So, oh, this is a heartbreaking turn. He misses the Focus Punch. Oh, it's so terrible. Oh, you would have kept that sub up. That was just. This is a wonderful game, actually. Oh yeah, I think he has to break through. Yeah, very deserved. What a fin. Well, I think Starmie has to hit the Hydro anyway. Great Stealth Rock from Husk there. Oh, what a finish. Yeah, I recommend my video on this for a more thorough look. Yeah. Alright, so Gen 5. This is not the most exemplary. Oh, no, this is the one I wanted to start with. Yeah, so there's a lot of things that are going to look different in Gen 5. I mean, look, a lot of things are going to be similar, like Excadrill, for example. But, I mean, Keldeo, that whole water fighting stab combination doesn't really work so well if the fighting part of it is off its, you know, pretty paltry attack stat. So it is essentially just, quote unquote, a really good water type attacker, but nowhere near the obnoxious metagame warping force. You can pretty much counter it with Ferrothorn if you'd like. We would like legitimately see Keldeo running like hidden power fire to not be walled by Pharaoh if the physical special split never came to existence, which is hilarious to think about. But that whole Dragon thing from Gen 4, where, you know, CB Outrage or DD Outrage, it just rips through everything. I mean, that goes double for Gen 5. That because Dragonite was such a force, and, you know, Scarf Salamence was a big deal. And then Kyurem Black got dropped into OU. I mean, Kyurem B would get horribly neutered by the physical special split. Well, actually, it's an interesting case because when KB first dropped to OU, it was very popular to run mix sets with it, like Ice Beam, Earth Power, Fusion Bolt, and, you know, either Sub or, you know, Roost or HP Fire. Some mix of those. You could also run Sub Roost, but then if you weren't running Fusion Bolt, you were better off just running standard Kyurem. But if you have the typing split as opposed to the physical special split, then Fusion Bolt becomes a special attack, and so it has. You can run a full special set without having to dip into like a defense or something, which, you know, that's nice. And I don't know, it's KB still gets pretty ruined because then people realize, thanks to people like CL spamming CB Outrage, that yeah, this is the way you want to go with it, and you don't spam CB Outrage if it's a special attack. So then it would just be a particularly brutal case of Gyarados syndrome, where it's a physical attacker without physical stab. So yeah, but then there's things like Landorus, which like don't change at all, or like Terrakion. But like it's more a lot of the continuations from Gen 4, like Breloom is another big force, whether it's Toxic Orb or Technician. But yeah, I think it's. Oh, that's the big one in Gen 5, and, you know, later, is Volcarona. This is a fantastic example of a Pokemon that, if the physical special split existed, Okay, like, it's like Keldeo. It would still be good, but that quadruple rocks weakness is a lot harder to justify when it's no longer such a potential automatic win. And the reason it's not such a potential automatic win is because Bug Buzz is now a physical move, and Volcarona has the worst attack stat ever, and it doesn't boost it with Quiver Dance. It would just be, it would run Fire Stab, and then, I mean, look, it's still got a great move pool, obviously. It gets Giga Drain in Black and White too, so Giga Drain, and then, Psychic, a Hidden Power, whatever. Roost if you want, Sub, but it no longer having Bug Buzz, I mean, that basically means that the Lotties answer it. Or, like, well, not the Slow Twins as much, but Slow King, definitely, because Giga Drain's not that threatening. And for a Pokemon that is so boom or bust, all or nothing, then you are going to have a lot more... I mean, I don't even know if it would be OU. It wouldn't be UU. I think that would be crazy. But, like, I think Volcarona would definitely be like that sleeper BL thing that sometimes shows up and embarrasses someone but isn't consistent because, Bug Buzz. Without Bug Buzz, it gets walled by Tyranitar. Like, completely, absolutely walled. Like, Giga Drain bounces off. You can't even slap on HP Fighting or anything because HP... Oh, wait, no, yes, you can. I'm sorry. I was mixing... Wait, no, you can't. I was right, yeah. HP Fighting is a physical move, so you can't do that either. So, yeah, that's pretty nightmarish. And this is what I meant earlier when I said that it would really keep a lot of broken stuff from being, that broken. Or potentially broken, or just really good in general. Tornadus Therian, another great example. Like, it's a very threatening Pokemon, but if Hurricane is a physical move, it's not nearly as scary. It's downright I don't want to say unthreatening, because as we've seen in Gen 6 and later, a lot of its power comes from utility. But in Gen 5, Torrent was banned because Specs Hurricane just ripped through everything. But you throw that Hurricane on its much lower attack stat. Not that it's a bad attack stat, but it's not, threatening to destroy all of OU. I can't see CB Torrent Hurricane suddenly just ripping through everything in sight. So, yeah, that would be a big change. And, yeah, so continuing into Gen 6, then all these, we have similar continuations of the whole thing with you no longer have physical Dragon Stab, and that affects Garchomp too. I wonder if Garchomp would have even been... Well, okay, in Gen 4 it's tough because that speed tier is so good, and it's so bulky for how fast and strong it is, relative to the tier to absurd degrees. Whereas in Gen 5 it still is those things, but not, as outlandish in comparison. But without that physical Dragon Stab, I mean, you have things like Latias switching into it. It would be running... It's like the thing in Gen 3 Ubers, where it runs... where Rayquaza runs HP Ghost or Bug to have a good move to hit, instead of, Dragon Claw, because it wants to hit the Lotties harder. You would genuinely have Garchomp doing stuff like that, because otherwise it just gets completely stuffed. And, I mean, like, Garchomp's special attack stat's not unusable by any means. I mean, people have run mixed Garchomp to great effect before. It's very threatening, very powerful. But, especially with moves like Draco Meteor. But it's not really your go-to, You're not really running, like, SD Draco Meteor. Because then you pretty much... You would have a lot tougher of a time filling out that moveset. So, I mean, the Dragon nerf of the physical special split not existing is, cannot be overstated, considering how powerful dragons were. And of course, dragons were powerful because of Draco Meteor as well, but when they're bludgeoning you on just one side of the spectrum, it's a whole different ballgame. So, Ferrothorn. Ferrothorn actually gets neutered quite a bit because it has a pathetic special attack stat, and it can't really use Stab Power Whip. If it's going to be a special attack, it's going to be doing absolutely nothing. So, like this Manaphy interaction here, where Manaphy is actually threatened by Pharaoh because Power Whip will hit it really hard, then that doesn't really exist in a world where the physical special split never came around. And the music is okay; it's just taking a while. And yeah, here's the Torn T thing again. I mean, that's just... I'm definitely going to be overlooking some things, not on purpose, but just because there's so much. I mean, just the more dragons you think of, like Mega Charizard X. I mean, okay, really strong. Actually, no, Mega Charizard X has Kyurem Black Gyarados syndrome. That's a strong physical attacker, a really strong one without physical stab. I mean, it'd still be strong because it's got a special attack stat just as good as its physical attack stat. The reason Zardex is a physical attacker is because it's got tough claws. But it does have 130 base attack or special attack as well. So it would be an interesting fire dragon to have around in OU, but it wouldn't have the tough claws boost on those special attacks. You know, maybe you'd see, I don't know, what would even use tough claws for that wouldn't be physical. But yeah, I mean, it's. I think it would be interesting to see special Zard X, but then you're kind of why use it over Zard Y? Well, lesser stealth rock weakness and different typing and stuff like that, and having stab on the dragon move is very nice. But yeah, so this is it just further goes to show the idea of not necessarily broken, but a lot of contentious Pokemon not being nearly as bad. Okay, obviously there are going to be cases like Mega Mawile. I mean, that's going to be... Well, it doesn't have... Actually, no, that's not a good example. I was gonna, Aegislash would still be like pretty obscene in Gen 6 and 7 without the split, obviously. Not everything is going to be as crazy. But like Mega Mawile no longer has Play Rough. Okay, Mega Mawile might still be kind of nuts in Gen 6. I wouldn't say that might not be broken. But it wouldn't be as busted, because Steel is a lot less spammable than Fairy. But of course, Mega Mawile doesn't even need to run Play Rough necessarily. And then you even have something like the Dark Urshifu. That doesn't need to run... or that doesn't have physical Dark Stab anymore, so it is just a fighting type, effectively. Cinderace, even. I mean, if you don't have physical Pyro Ball, then not threatening at all. I mean, with Libero, I guess it doesn't really matter, because it still has like high jump kick and stuff. But, I mean, no longer having that super powerful Fire Stab, that's a major difference. So, yeah, I think, or Kartana is another fantastic example. It still have strong Steel Stab, it's fast, and, Sacred Sword and Swords Dance, all that stuff. But no longer having Leaf Blade's coverage, I mean, that's game-changing. I mean, similar deal for things like Tapu Bulu and Rillaboom. So I think in general, this doesn't really affect defensive Pokemon as much, I'm noticing. Just because, which makes sense, because a lot of them deal in like passive damage. Like even if Ferrothorn doesn't have Power Whip anymore as a threatening move, it's still going to be spiking and leech seeding and thunder waving and all that other stuff. And Iron Head / Gyro Ball are still useful stabs. It has knockoff, all that great Ferrothorn stuff. But walls in general, are not going, and a lot of them like Lando and Heatran and Gliscor and Clef, they don't really change based on the split, so that helps as well. But it does help keep offensive, monsters in check more. Not necessarily all of them. Again, I think Magearna would still be kind of insane regardless. But, yeah, I mean, some Pokemon are just less threatening. Others get, so neutered. Like Alakazam without Focus Blast, I mean, completely stuffed by Heatran, like, utterly. And, like, Gengar as well. I mean, that's... Yeah, so, T-Tar becomes... I mean, again, but even T-Tar, it gets, I don't know about kept in balance necessarily, but it doesn't completely spiral out of control, to outrageous extents because it doesn't have physical pursuit. So, yeah, I think that's more or less everything. I covered basically what needed to. So let's just watch this Hippo finish off the Scizor. All right, wonderful. If you've stuck this far, check out the movie channel. Well, okay, there's nothing to check out on it. I just made it. But, because I have a lot going on. But I am so happy that so many of you are interested in the movie channel. And it will have stuff on it soon. But yeah, slow and steady and cranking these out. gradually. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one, both on this channel and the movie one.